Welcome to Tea with Toby. Today we're going to be discussing Bill 44. So, Bill 44, the Human Rights, Citizenship, and Multiculturalism Amendment Act 2009, was introduced by the Conservative government in response to the results of a landmark case, Rant v. Alberta in 1998. So, Rant was a laboratory coordinator at an Alberta college, and he came out as homosexual. The president of the college demanded that Rant resign, giving him the reason of non-compliance to the college's policy on homosexual practice. Rant refused to resign, and consequently his employment with the college was terminated. He then went to file a complaint with the Alberta Human Rights Commission, but the commission told him that he couldn't file a complaint under the Individual Rights Protection Act because it didn't include sexual orientation as a protected ground. I know, crazy, right? So Rant takes Alberta, the province, to court, and he wins the case. So the Supreme Court of Canada orders Alberta to include sexual orientation into their human rights code. So in 2009, after more than a decade, the Alberta government finally complies and creates Bill 44. Well, that's what the first 10 sections of the bill dictates, but we'll be focusing on Section 11, which is very controversial. A board as defined in the School Act shall provide notice to a parent or guardian of a student where courses of study, educational programs, or instructional materials, or instruction or exercises prescribed under that act include subject matter that deals explicitly with religion, sexuality, or sexual orientation. You may think that it's good that parents get to be aware of what is taught in the classroom, which is true, but 2A allows parents to remove their child if the teacher is discussing anything about religion, sexuality, or sexual orientation. Now let's get into why this is problematic. Not literally. First, let's talk about the purpose of education. An education is intended to prepare students to be contributing members of society. From the point of view of being a good citizen, controversy presents an opportunity to learn how people can hold different beliefs and still live together. The textbook also lists two main purposes of teaching controversial issues. The first one is to develop rationality by valuing evidence, logic, and the careful accounting of the arguments of others. The second purpose is to develop the knowledge, skills, and attitudes that enable students to work alongside other people despite fundamental differences in beliefs. This shows how important it is for students to learn about controversial topics such as religion, sexuality, or sexual orientation, and how detrimental it can be for students to be removed from these conversations. Another case that I want to bring up is the Chamberlain v. Surrey School Board, where a teacher approached the school board for approval of 3 books that included same-sex parents. And the school board denied these requests, saying that it wasn't a part of the curriculum and that there was a risk of cognitive dissonance. Cognitive dissonance is defined by the discomfort created by 2 different beliefs or attitudes that conflict with each other. And in the Chamberlain case, the board was worried about the cognitive dissonance created through the exposure to views different from the views of the students' parents. In response to this, Chamberlain took the whole school board to court. Chamberlain won the case, and the court refuted the concern of cognitive dissonance between what students learned at home and what they were taught in schools. I'm going to read a quote to you from the Supreme Court in response to this concern. Exposure to some cognitive dissonance is arguably necessary if children are to be taught what tolerance itself involves. The demand for tolerance cannot be interpreted as the demand to approve of another person's beliefs or practices. When we ask people to be tolerant of others, we do not ask them to abandon their personal convictions. We merely ask them to respect the rights, values, and ways of being of those who may not share those convictions. The belief that others are entitled to equal respect depends not on the belief that their values are right, but on the belief that they have a claim to equal respect regardless of whether they are right. Learning about tolerance is therefore learning that other people's entitlement to respect from us does not depend on whether their views accord with our own. Children cannot learn this unless they are exposed to views that differ from those they are taught at home. This is another reason why Bill 44 is no bueno. Cognitive dissonance is important, as mentioned in the Supreme Court quote that I just read, and Bill 44 allows parents to remove their child from this exposure. Well, you see, parents essentially have two primary interests which come into play when considering who gets to decide how children are educated. We have self-regarding interests and other regarding interests. We'll only be discussing one category for the purpose of this argument. The first interest can be described as self-regarding interests, where parents are tempted to think of their child's life as a virtual extension of their own. This can explain why parents would want to remove their child from learning things that oppose their own views. They want their children to have the same views and beliefs. However, this can be problematic because it contradicts the purpose of an education. As mentioned earlier, we want students to be tolerant of other views, but if parents aren't tolerant and have the power to remove their students, they're pretty much teaching their children to be intolerant and therefore not allowing children to learn how to be contributing citizens in society. Additionally, most parents aren't capable of educating their children sufficiently when it comes to sexual education. So I'm going to hit you with some facts. A Harvard Graduate School of Education report found that around 50% of parents express uneasiness when attempting to discuss sex with children, whereas teachers are equipped with resources and experience teaching sexual education. This suggests that many children are getting their sex education from the internet or from their friends, both of which, as we all know, are not very reliable sources of information, which can lead to damaging expectations of healthy sexual relationships. More than 40% of parents don't discuss sex with their children until after they are sexually active. At least 23 million girls aged 15 to 19 have an unmet need for modern contraception, which is largely due to the social stigma associated with sexual education. The leading cause of death in this age group, 15 to 19, is unsafe abortions and pregnancy complications. Evidence shows that youth who are taught sex ed delay sexual activity, and for those sexually active, it reduces the number of sexual partners and unplanned pregnancies and increases the use of contraception. As you know, I'm learning how to be a teacher, so Bill 44 does affect me greatly. It doesn't let me do my job of ensuring that all my students receive the same education to become contributing citizens of society. Bill 44 changes the way that we teach. The government and the Alberta Teachers Association agreed that we shouldn't let the new law to have a chilling effect on our classroom practice. But it does. Bill 44 creates an unavoidable fear of reprisal when teaching controversial issues. So teachers are afraid to get in trouble, understandably, and as a result, the quality of education is decreased. Here are some more specific examples. Well-known works of literature that have been studied for years and which our Alberta government-approved resources now could contravene Bill 44. Margaret Atwood's novel, The Handmaid's Tale, has much sexual content. Shakespeare's Macbeth features witches who foretell the future. J.D. Salinger's Catcher in the Rye is about a teenage high school dropout depressed and obsessed with sex. Teachers don't want to deal with controversy anymore. Veterans just want to teach, and new teachers aren't ready to risk censure, so they avoid literature with religious or sexual content. And the self-censorship has spread to other themes as well. Challenging novels such as 1984 are replaced with safer ones such as Pride and Prejudice. There's an increasing pressure to avoid controversial materials. Ron Brown, chair of the Rights and Freedom Committee of the Writers' Union of Canada, called it silent censorship. This is really concerning considering the current events happening. There is an extreme need for everyone to be uncomfortable and tolerant. Bill 44, which is supposed to protect people of different sexual orientation, allows parents to remove their children from learning about LGBTQ rights and issues, which is discriminating against sexual orientation. Students need to learn how to be tolerant of different views and beliefs and be ready to be uncomfortable in the face of controversial issues instead of just pretending they don't exist or just plain ignoring it. Everyone should know about Bill 44 and the consequences that they may have on future citizens of our society.